The spit hit my cheek while I was reading the letter from the VA about my grandson's death benefits. "Hey, homeless man," the kid said, maybe 16, with the kind of cruel laugh that cuts through your soul. "You can't sleep here all day." I looked up from the bench at the Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard bus stop, where I'd been sitting for exactly 12 minutes waiting for the 47 line. 3 teenagers stood in front of me, 2 white kids from the suburbs, based on their $100 sneakers, and 1 black kid who should have known better. "I'm not homeless," I said quietly, folding the letter back into my worn canvas backpack. The same backpack I'd carried through Fallujah in 2004, now holding the last official correspondence about Marcus, my grandson who died in Afghanistan 3 months ago. "Yeah, right," the second kid said, recording with his phone. "Look at this old dude. Probably been lying about being a veteran for years to get free stuff." The black kid, he reminded me of Marcus at that age. All anger and misplaced energy stepped closer. "My dad says guys like you fake PTSD to get disability checks." I kept my eyes on the street, watching for the bus. In 30 minutes, I had an appointment at the VA hospital to discuss Marcus's burial arrangements. The boy's parents had died in a car accident when he was 12, and I was all he had left. Now I was all that was left of our family line. "You even listening to us?" The first kid kicked my boot. "We're talking to you." "I hear you," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. 67 years old, and I still shook when confronted with senseless cruelty. "Prove you're a veteran," the recording kid demanded. "Show us your papers." "Don't need to prove anything to you. See? He's lying." The black kid grabbed from my backpack. "Probably stolen. Let's see what's really in there." I pulled the bag closer to my chest. Inside were Marcus's dog tags, sent home with his personal effects. My own medals from Iraq Bronze Star, Purple Heart, 2 combat action ribbons. The flag from Marcus's funeral, still folded in perfect triangles. "Let go of the bag," I said. "Or what?" The suburban kid laughed. What's an old homeless dude gonna do? They didn't understand. I wasn't holding the bag to protect money or food or the worldly possessions of a street person. I was holding the last physical connection to a boy who'd called me Grandpa Joe and dreamed of becoming a teacher when he finished his Army service. The black kid yanked harder. "Come on, man. Share the wealth." "Last warning," I said, standing. Slowly, my knees protested too many years carrying heavy gear, too many jumps from too many vehicles. But I was still 6'2", still had the bearing of a man who'd led soldiers through hell. "Ooh, scary," the recording kid mocked. "What are you gonna do? Fight 3 teenagers?" "I'm gonna ask you to leave me alone. And if we don't?" I looked at each of them in turn. The suburban kids with their privileged smirks, the black kid with his misguided anger. All of them young enough to be my grandsons, all of them old enough to know better. Then I'll defend myself. The first kid spit again, this time aiming for my backpack. Fake soldier, fake hero, probably never even left the country. That's when something snapped. Not the violent snap of a man losing control. I'd learned to master that beast decades ago. This was the quiet snap of a man who'd buried too many young soldiers, watched too many flag-draped coffins disappear into the ground. "You want to see my service?" I asked, setting the backpack on the bench. "Hell yeah," the recording kid said. "This is going on TikTok." I unzipped the main compartment, revealing the carefully folded flag. Below it, wrapped in tissue paper, were Marcus's dog tags and my own medals. I lifted them out slowly, letting the morning sun catch the medal. "Bronze Star with Valor," I said, holding up the star-shaped medal. "For actions during the Battle of Fallujah, November 2004. The kids fell silent, but I wasn't done. "Purple Heart," I continued, showing them the Profile of George Washington. For wounds received in action against an enemy of the United States. The suburban kids exchanged glances. The black kid took a step back. And these, I said, lifting Marcus's dog tags, belonged to Specialist Marcus Jefferson, United States Army, my grandson, killed by an IED outside Kabul on October 15th, 2024. The recording kid lowered his phone. Oh shit. Language, I said automatically. The same thing I'd told Marcus when he was young and full of righteous anger at the world's injustices. We didn't know, the black kid said quietly. Course you didn't? You saw an old black man sitting at a bus stop and assumed the worst. Same assumptions people have been making about men like me for 60 years. I carefully rewrapped the medals, placed them back in the bag with Marcus's tags and the folded flag. My hands shook not from age or fear, but from the effort of keeping my emotions in check. Look, mister, the first suburban kid said, we're sorry. We thought, you thought. Wrong. I sat back down on the bench, suddenly exhausted. But that's not the worst part. What's the worst part? The black kid asked. The worst part is that you filmed it. You recorded yourselves harassing a veteran at a bus stop, planning to put it online for laughs. That's the worst part. The recording kid stared at his phone like it had grown teeth. I can delete it, can you? Can you delete the moment you chose cruelty over compassion? Can you delete the fact that you saw an old man sitting alone and decided he deserved to be humiliated? A car horn honked behind us. I turned to see a white pickup truck pulling over, hazard lights flashing. The driver's door opened, and a man in his 50s stepped out Latino, wearing a mechanic's uniform with Rodriguez embroidered on the pocket. Everything okay here? He asked, walking toward us. Just waiting for the bus, I said. Rodriguez looked at the 3 teenagers, then at me, and back at the teenagers. Something flickered across his face recognition, maybe understanding. You? Boys bothering this gentleman? No, sir, the first suburban kid said quickly. We were just talking. Talking, Rodriguez repeated. He was studying my face now, the way veterans study each other, looking for the invisible signs of shared experience. You look familiar, brother. Do I? Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, 1st Infantry Division. Served in Iraq, 2003 to 2005. Sergeant. First Class Joseph Jefferson, I replied. 2nd Battalion, 3rd Infantry Regiment. Fallujah, 2004. Rodriguez's face lit up. Holy shit, you're Joe Jefferson. You know me? Know you? Brother, you're a legend. You're the guy who carried wounded Marines through sniper fire during the Second Battle of Fallujah. You're the guy who held that intersection for 6 hours while we evacuated civilians. The 3 teenagers were staring at us now, their earlier bravado completely evaporated. I did my job, I said. Your job? Rodriguez laughed. Man, you saved maybe 50 lives that day. There's guys still serving who tell stories about Sergeant Jefferson and the miracle at Intersection 7. He turned to the teenagers, his expression hardening. You boys know who you've been bothering? This is a genuine American hero. This man has medals from the President of the United States. We didn't know, the black kid said again. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You saw an old black man and assumed he was worthless. Rodriguez pulled out his phone. What's your name, son? Why? Because I'm about to call your school, your parents, and the local news. People need to know what you've been doing. Please don't, the recording kid said. We're sorry. We really are. Sorry doesn't undo the damage, Rodriguez said. Sorry doesn't erase the disrespect you showed to a man who bled for your freedom. I stood up, placing a hand on Rodriguez's shoulder. It's okay, brother. It's not okay, Joe. These kids need to learn. They're learning now. Look at them. The three teenagers stood in a cluster, shame written across their faces. The suburban kids kept glancing at their phones, probably wondering if their friends would see the video they'd planned to post. The black kid stared at the ground, his earlier anger replaced by something that looked like understanding. "You want to make this right?" I asked them. They nodded. "Then listen. Really listen. I've been riding this bus route for 3 years, going to the VA hospital for treatment. PTSD, arthritis, the usual stuff that happens when you get old and carry too much weight for too long. I've sat on this bench hundreds of times, and you know what I've seen?" "What?" the black kid asked. "I've seen people walk by, drive by, ignore. The old man at the bus stop. I've seen kids like you make assumptions about people like me. But I've also seen kindness. I've seen bus drivers wait an extra minute when they see me hurrying to catch the bus. I've seen strangers offer to help when I'm carrying heavy bags. I've seen the best and worst of humanity right here on this corner." Rodriguez nodded. "Joe's right. You boys have a choice to make. You can be the kind of people who kick others when they're down, or you can be the kind who lift others up. How do we lift you up?" The recording kid asked. "You don't lift me up. I'm fine. I'm Survivor. I've been through worse than anything you can dish out." I hefted my backpack, feeling the weight of Marcus's memory. "But you can lift up the next person, the next old man or woman sitting alone, the next veteran who might not have medals to prove their worth, the next person who doesn't look like what you expect a hero to look like." The bus was finally coming, a 47-line rumbling down MLK Boulevard with its familiar blue and white stripes. I gathered my things, preparing to make the journey to the VA hospital, where I'd finalized the details of Marcus's burial. "Mr. Jefferson," the black kid said as I prepared to board, "can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Why didn't you fight back? When we were bothering you, why didn't you just show us what you could do?" I paused at the bus steps, thinking about Marcus and the letter in my backpack and the long road that had brought me to this moment. "Because fighting back would have made me like you," I said. "And I spent too many years learning to be better than my worst impulses." The bus door hissed shut behind me. Through the window, I watched Rodriguez talking to the three teenagers, his hands gesturing as he spoke. The recording kid was nodding, taking notes on his phone, not filming, but writing. The suburban kids looked like they were listening, really listening. For the first time in their lives, as the bus pulled away, I saw one of the suburban kids run after us, waving. The bus driver, an older black woman named Dorothy, who'd been driving this route for 15 years, stopped and opened the door. "Mr. Jefferson," the kid called, breathing hard. "I wanted to ask, would you come speak to our school? About your service, about respect, about everything?" I looked at Dorothy, who nodded encouragingly. She'd heard this conversation before, had probably seen variations of it play out at bus stops across the city. "What school?" I asked. "Roosevelt." "Hi, I'm student council president. We have an assembly next week about veterans, and I think you'd be perfect." "I'll think about it. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Jefferson, thank you for your service." The door closed again, and the bus continued its journey toward the VA hospital. I sat in my usual seat, third row from the back, and pulled out the letter about Marcus's benefits. But for the first time in months, I wasn't reading it with despair. I was thinking about the kid who'd run after the bus, about the recognition in Rodriguez's eyes, about the power of truth to transform cruelty into understanding. I was thinking about Marcus, and how he'd always believed that people could change if given the chance. Maybe he was right. Maybe that's what he'd been fighting for in Afghanistan, not just freedom from terrorism, but freedom to become better than we were. Freedom to choose kindness over cruelty, understanding over assumption, Respect over ridicule. The bus pulled into the VA hospital parking lot, and I gathered my things. The appointment with the burial coordinator would be difficult, but necessary. Marcus deserved a proper goodbye, with full military honors and the respect he'd earned through his service. But first, I had a phone call to make to Roosevelt High School. Because sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to educate the living. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the education starts at a bus stop on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, where an old soldier teaches 3 young people that heroes don't. Always look like what you expect. And respect isn't something you give based on appearances. It's something you give because we're all human beings trying to make it through another day. The real battle, I realized, wasn't the one I'd fought in Fallujah 20 years ago. It was the one I'd fought at the bus stop this morning, choosing patience over anger, education over retaliation, hope over despair. And for the first time since Marcus died, I felt like I'd won. 3 weeks later, I stood in the Roosevelt High School auditorium, looking out at 800 students. In the front row sat 3 familiar faces, the suburban kids who'd learned to ask questions instead of making assumptions, and the black kid who'd learned that heroes come in all colors and ages. My name is Joseph Jefferson, I began, and I want to tell you about my grandson Marcus, and why your assumptions about people can be the difference between honoring a hero and humiliating one. The auditorium fell silent. In the back, Rodriguez stood with the school principal, both of them smiling. On the screen behind me, a photo of Marcus in his army uniform looked down at the students young, proud, and full of the same potential. I saw in their faces. It all started at a bus stop, I continued, where 3 young people taught me that the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with words. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to listen, those words can change everything. The story I told that day wasn't about war or medals or the glory of military service. It was about the courage to see past assumptions, to treat every person with dignity, and to understand that the old man sitting alone at the bus stop might be carrying more heroism in his heart than you could ever imagine. And when I finished, 800 students rose to their feet and applauded not for the medals or the service record, but for the lesson that heroes are made not in the moments of combat, but in the quiet choices to be better than our worst impulses. Marcus would have been proud. Hell, Marcus would have been amazed that his old grandfather had figured out how to change the world, one bus stop at a time.